Where in Carroll County did you live?
In the, actually a little town by the name, it's called Gaither, but it's just kind of west of Sykesville. It's about a half a mile from Sykesville, but it's just a little, when I grew up, it was a little town called Gaither. It had a post office in the back of a lady's house, so I grew up in Gaither.
I live in Finksburg. It's kind of the same thing.
Yep, absolutely.
Why did you choose to stay or live in Carroll County?
You know, you just set down your roots. Really had no desire to go anywhere else, so I just stayed there, still there. But who knows?
What is your favorite thing about Carroll County?
Well, at the time when I was growing up, it was, you know, it was very laid back, kind of a Mayberry-esque, if you will. You know, you knew most of the people. You know, my parents worked in Carroll County at the state hospital, and just knew everybody. And it was, you know, very small rural area. You know, I could go out. I could go out during the day, or you know, in the summertime when it wasn't in school, and I could be going out for hours at a time, and my parents didn't need to worry about me. So it was just a good way to come up. I lived in a very rural area.
Did you have a job as a teenager?
Yeah,
Jobs?
probably. I had lots of jobs. I mowed grass for some of the neighbors, and I had some fellows that I grew up with. Their dads had they were carpenters, did construction, and I did some construction work and worked on the farm, and I had lots of, you know, little menial jobs, if you will, but, you know, they footed the bill.
What high school did you go to?
South Carroll.
What was your favorite subject?
Not being in school. Sorry to say that, but not being in school. I like the athletic part, phys ed and hands-on kind of stuff, but I wasn't such a wonderful student.
What kind of things did you do in Carroll County when you were a teenager?
Actually, my two grandfathers helped organize the Sykesville Volunteer Fire Department back in the early 30s. It bled over to my father and my uncles, so at a very early age I was involved in the fire service. Probably from the time I was old enough to get up and chase my dad. I used to go on fire calls with my dad, go to the firehouse and hang out with my father, which at the time was on Main Street in Sykesville. So I actually spent most of my free time either at the firehouse and when I was old enough, chasing girls, like most teenage boys, I guess.
Yep. Did you always want to go into the military?
No, I don't believe so. I don't think so. Because my dad and his uncles were all World War II veterans, and they talked about their experiences very, very, very little. So I don't think. I think my first experience is I had an uncle who was my mom's brother, who was in the Navy, went into the Navy, and he's the first one I can remember coming home on leave, and the Navy had a pretty sharp uniform then, and it kind of caught my eye, and he's the one that really actually sparked my interest to first go into the military.
What branch did you serve in?
Actually, I served in the United States Navy from 1969 to 1971. I had a break in service for almost 5 years, 6 years, and then I went into the Maryland Army National Guard, located right here in Westminster.
Do you know why did you pick those things?
Why did I pick?
Why did you pick the U.S. Navy and the National Guard?
Well, actually, I picked the Navy because of my uncle, and as silly as it sounds, like the way the uniform looked. I was not having such a wonderful time in high school, and I just thought Uncle Sam would do me much better, so I elected to go into the Navy and spent nearly 2 years in the Navy, which was I probably got a better education there than I would have gotten if I'd stayed in high school. And then it was just very coincidental that I wound up in the National Guard. 6 years later, I knew a recruiter here in Westminster that we just struck up a casual conversation, and one thing led to another, and he told me I should come and try it, which I did, and turned out to be probably one of the better decisions of my life.
Did you get to do any traveling, like overseas, while in the National Guard or the U.S. Navy?
I did. In the Navy, I got to, after I got out of basic training, I was what they call an aviation bosun mate. I worked the flight deck of aircraft carriers, and I got to do a med cruise to the Mediterranean, rode to Spain and all through the Med region. And then when, after I got out of the Navy and went to the National Guard, I've traveled to Honduras, El Salvador, Germany. I've been to Iraq, numerous places.
Did you have a favorite place?
They all had their good points and their bad points. Not so much favorite places. Probably the people I served with, more so than the places I was at.
Okay. What was one of your most favorite memories of when you came home for leave?
I guess when I came home from Iraq, came home from a combat tour, the welcome we got home, and I actually almost felt, kind of guilty about it because I've got a really soft spot in my heart for World War II veterans. I guess because my father and his uncles were World War II veterans, and as Tom Brokaw once said, they were truly the greatest generation. And then the Vietnam veterans who just got treated extremely poor when they came home. They didn't come home as units; they came home as individuals, and they just weren't treated well. When we came home, the country had kind of taken, from Iraq and Afghanistan. The nation has kind of taken a turn, and we went the other direction. And when we came home, we had honor guard, or actually, I believe they call them Freedom Riders, a motorcycle group that escorted us from Fort Dix, New Jersey, where we were actually the Air Force Base right next to Fort Dix. We had a motorcycle escort all the way back to Baltimore, and there were herds of people there, and veterans and flags, and I just remember the hundreds of people that were the family members and people in the community who were there to greet us, and like I said, I almost felt guilty because of how the veterans from Vietnam were treated, compared to the way we were treated. It just kind of always bothered me. So.
As a future film major in college, I would like to ask you your opinion on Hollywood's interpretation of the military.
It depends on what you're watching.
Depends on what you're watching.
You talking about movie-wise?
Yeah, movies.
There are the movies that have recently come out. Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan. Although there's Hollywood involved in it, to hold the audience. The people that produced those movies did a really excellent job. The thing that I noticed, because as growing up, I always liked military movies, but some of the older military movies, if you notice the soldiers, their hands are clean, there's no dirt underneath their fingernails, and they're cleanly shaved. If you look at any of the most recent movies, and although the series Saving Private Ryan, which was an HBO special, I guess it's probably 10 or 12 years old now. If you looked at those guys, there's dirt under their fingernails, and they look worn and haggard and worn out. And so I guess it depends on who's producing the movie, but some of them were done really well. Some of them maybe not so much.
Do you have any advice for teenagers and young adults going into the military now?
I would say make sure that when you go in, you get good advice from, talk to other veterans, get good advice from your parents. Don't get yourself snowballed by a recruiter who just looks at you as a number, and not so much as looking out for your future, because there are a lot of great opportunities for young folks in the military to do great things, and but there are also some MOSs, which is a military occupational skill that unless you plan on staying in the military all your life, once you get out, there's absolutely, no correlation in the civilian life to it. So you need to make sure if you're looking for something, past the military, that you go in and pick up some sort of skill that's going to be good to you once you come out. But just don't let yourself get railroaded by a overambitious recruiter, which it'll happen. It'll happen. You got, because those guys and girls are just trying to, they have a quota system. They have to make, make numbers. If not, they're sent to other places. So you just got to be careful that you're just not a number.
What is one of the most important things you think you learned while serving?
People, leadership, my leadership skills that I was able to pick up, responsibility. You kind of learn who you are. I mean, I've really learned, the military helped me learn who I am, to become a better leader. Little things like, I tell young people now, that if you're going to be a leader, you can't lead from the back, you got to lead from the front. Little things like don't ever ask people to do things that you haven't already done and won't do again. So it's the military really taught me to be probably an excellent leader, and respect to my elders. I have a lot of respect for for my the people that kind of paved the way for me, for where I'm at. I've had the opportunity to meet through the military a lot of unique and very interesting and some really, really great people.
What did you do after you got out of the National Guard?
Well, I've only been retired. I retired in March of 2010, so I've only been retired 5 years now. But I'm still currently working. I work a full-time job I'm a captain with Carroll County Fire and Rescue, where I've been for 30 years. I'm continuing to still work. Have about another 18 months before I retire from the fire department. And then I guess life is going to change as I know it now. So I haven't really decided what I'm going to do, but I'm still working. And being in the National Guard, most National Guard soldiers do have a job or a full-time career somewhere, which is really something unique, because you really have to be a juggler, if you will, and be able to balance work schedule, especially when you work in fire service, or you're a nurse, or working in the police department, where you don't work a normal 8-to-5 job. You work weekends, you work nights. For example, where I work a 24-hour shift. So you have to be able to balance your work schedule with drill weekends and being deployed and all that kind of stuff.
What is your favorite part about working at the fire department?
The public service. I've just always been involved. So, like I said earlier, probably since I was old enough to stand up and run. The public service, and I'm kind of a type A personality. The thrill and the excitement, but it's a public service. Being and I don't really like the term. I want to help people, but it's kind of what it is. Getting out there and being able to help people, but it's the inner type A personality as well, which suits you well in that line of work.
What are some activities that you do around Carroll County now?
You know what? I'm kind of a self-proclaimed workaholic. I work a lot, probably more than I should. I don't do other than live in Carroll County. Now I do like to ride a motorcycle. My wife and I ride, so we ride through Carroll County, but other than that, I stay so busy. Normally, when I'm not working, I'm relaxing.
Do you hope to influence others to join the U.S. Navy or the National Guard?
No, I don't. I've never claimed to be a recruiter, and if a young person, young man or young woman come up to me and ask me about the military, I'm more than happy to volunteer information and help them and guide them along the way. But I don't like to try to push people. If somebody is struggling and wants to know, about the military, things they can get into, and all the ins and outs, yeah, I'm more than happy to help them. But I'm not one to go out and pluck people off the street and say, you know what, you should be in the military. That's a job for a recruiter. They're kind of a special talent for that.
I just lost my question. What is it like knowing that you save lives?
It's kind of humbling. It's humbling. I've never been, the fire service and even in the military, it takes all kind of people to make the world go around. My dad, who is he's gone now, but he always had a favorite saying that, there's a lot of different people in the world. That's why they make 31 flavors ice cream, because everybody don't like chocolate. So, there's a flavor for everybody, and that's kind of the way people are. And in my line of work, we have chest beaters, and we have people that go along and just do their job and go on to the next call. But it's to influence whether somebody may live or die or saving their property. It can be very, very humbling.
How has Carroll County changed since you were a teenager, young adult to now?
Oh my goodness, you don't have that much time. It's actually, when I was growing up, in the lower, what we used to call there was always a running joke that where I lived, they called it the lower end of Carroll County, and you pretty much, I couldn't go out and get into mischief because everybody knew who I was. Everybody knew everybody. When I was growing up, there was no stoplights in Eldersburg. There was a couple stop signs, but there was no stoplights. If you wanted to go to a fast food place, you had to go all the way over into Balmer County to Reisterstown to get a hamburger after 8 o'clock at night. But just the way it's grown. I mean, there's shopping malls and strip malls and shopping centers and fast food and just townhouses and homes, and so many people and so much traffic in Carroll County. It's I'm not sure if it's kids don't have the opportunity that I did. That when my mother on Saturday morning would kick me out of the house and tell me don't come back till dark, and you do that to your kids a day, you'd be just panic stricken about where they're at and are they safe.
Could you tell me one of your favorite memories as a child growing up in Carroll County?
I think just living, like I say, living where I lived. I actually grew up right on the Carroll County line. Again, in a very rural area, and there was a railroad track that actually ran right next to our property, the B&O Railroad, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud because my mother's still alive, and she knows now, but she can't catch me. She's too old to run. So, as a child, I used to. I had a cousin who lived a couple miles below me down in Sykesville, and I had friends that lived kind of west in Mount Airy. My main means of transportation was hopping trains, which was totally illegal and extremely dangerous. And I can remember my mother was a nurse over at Springfield Hospital, and she was you'd have to know my mother, but she grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. She's a hillbilly. I mean, I love her to death, but she's a hillbilly, and she told me one time, boy, if I ever catch you on a train, I'm gonna beat you to death. I'm too smart. You ain't never gonna catch me. You're never gonna catch me on a train. And I'd hop the train one day to go see somebody, and a couple hours later, I hopped another train going west to come home. And my mother was home standing in the front yard, and I'm standing on a flat car like George Washington crossing the Potomac, and I look up and see my mother standing in the front yard, and I thought, oh, I'm so busted. Actually, that's not what I said. I just actually said, oh shit, I'm had. And I guess at the time I was 13, maybe 12, 13 years old. So in my infinite wisdom, I thought, well, it's not going to get me. So I actually jumped off the train on the opposite side of the track. But when I jumped off, I rolled in the stone and I broke my ankle, and I was bleeding everywhere. And I can remember sitting up and looking under the train enough just to see my mother leaning down and looking under the train. And I'm thinking, I looked down and my foot was turned around backwards, and she just stood there watching me. And of course, back in those days, we had a family doctor, and he made house calls. And she came over and snatched me up by the collar and drug me across the track, and my foot's kind of dangling. And of course, I'm crying and carrying on. And I told her, I said, Mom, you got to take me to Dr. Hall's. And I'm just crying and carrying on. Of course, I'm bleeding all over the place. And she says, I'm not taking you anywhere until I clean you up. So she proceeds to take me in the bathroom, get a old rough wash rag out and a bottle of alcohol, and proceeds to clean my wounds up with alcohol. So if you want to call that a fond memory, but my mother is, and she's still alive. My mother was, she's a hard lady. She's a hard lady. I love her to death.
I understand that. Can you tell me one of your favorite memories when you were enlisted in the U.S. Navy or the National Guard?
You know what? I think there's so many. Probably the soldiers that I've served with. Served with a lot of great soldiers, but I think I was very lucky to meet, and anybody that knows any probably have been around Carroll County at all. I had the opportunity to meet and actually become friends with a gentleman by the name of Joe Fahrenholt. Joe Fahrenholt was a World War II veteran who ran across Normandy Beach on D-Day, was in the second wave, and Joe was the only enlisted man in the history of the United States military to win 4 Silver Stars in one campaign. He was the only one ever to do that. I didn't realize at the time. I used to play semi-pro football for the Carroll County Chargers, and I think now I think they're still around, but I think they're called the Carroll County Cannons now. But it used to be the Carroll County Chargers. We used to play right over here at Westminster High School. That was our home field. But Joe actually was part owner of that organization. So I actually played football for Joe, and didn't. I was interested in playing football and not ownership and all that stuff. Joe actually showed up at our unit, which was over on Holland Road at the time. Well, it's still there. He showed up one day, him and his wife, Reg, showed up in his walker, and Reg's kind of, waddling along behind him, and he was actually looking for a place for the 29th Division Association, which is like a group of, it's like an American Legion post, except it's actually soldiers from the 29th Infantry Division. They were looking for a place to meet. We chatted and told him, I said, whatever we can do to help you. So Joe kind of became a mainstay in our unit. He'd show up on drill weekends to talk to the soldiers. When we'd come home from annual training, him and his wife would be there to greet us. So over time, Joe would actually tell us, he would tell us stories when because being the first sergeant there, you just, people, they talk about the National Guard, and they think it's only, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, but as you get up in rank, it don't work that way. You have to go in there 2 or 3 times during the week and at nighttime, and it's just different things. So I was there a lot when Joe would come in, and Joe kept telling stories about winning Silver Stars. Well, every time he told a story, it would change. So I said to one of the full-time individuals, one of my full-time soldiers that worked in the unit, I said, there's something going on there. Either Joe's getting Alzheimer's and forgetting his stories, Joe's a liar, which I hope he's not, or he's done something pretty extraordinary. So one day in the unit, I actually asked Joe, do you happen to have copies of your Silver Star citations? And he grinned and said, yeah, I do. I have some in my car. So I said, could I make copies? So all this kind of transpired over like 18 months. We sent everything that he had given us away to the Department of the Army. Took about 18 months. Finally, the Department of the Army called us back and said, not sure where you found this guy, but he's legit. He's done something very, very unique, and you need to hold on to him. And he consequently, Joe wound up getting a lot of recognition, which was way past due. His family didn't even know the things that he was involved with in World War II. As a matter of fact, if anybody's ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, the very last scene in the movie where the soldiers, the American soldiers in the town is getting overrun, Joe was actually involved in an incident very, very similar to that, where they were in a place called Borheim, Germany. They were surrounded, they were being overrun, and the soldiers in his units were dropping like flies. He got actually shot. He had 32 holes in him. He got shot by a tank, and his leg was almost torn off. So Joe wound up getting a lot of recognition. So I think of all the individuals I've ever met, and all of my soldiers I ever served with were great soldiers, but Joe was pretty unique, to actually talk to somebody who knew people and talked to people that you only read about in history. He had the opportunity to talk to General Patton and General Eisenhower and Hap Gerhardt, who was a 29th Division commander. He talked to people that I only ever read about. So, but Joe too, he's going. As a matter of fact, Joe, when he passed away in 2000, they wound up renaming the 5th Regiment Armory. The drill floor down there is actually named after Joe, and Joe was a longtime Carroll County resident.
Did you win any awards? And can you tell us about it?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about them?
Well, that's what most of this is. Not a great chest beater. Some of the things that I wear are just gimmies you get for serving. I actually have a Bronze Star for valor, for I don't want to call it heroics, but some of my actions in when I served in Iraq. And have a Legion of Merit, which is actually pretty hard to come by. Have a state award that for pulling a woman and her child out of a car, were involved in a car accident. So again, I don't like to toot my own bugle, but I've received a lot of awards, and we'll leave it at that. How about that?
Okay. Can you tell me more about being overseas?
Yeah, I tell you, I think being in the active duty, being in the military period, when you serve what they call CONUS, which is the Continental United States, a CONUS deployment. When you train in the United States, when you go to a range to fire a weapon, it's very, very controlled. When you go to a range, I always laugh that you go to a range and make soldiers, because they have range safeties and people that run the range, and they control every movement so people don't inadvertently get shot, and they actually make soldiers almost scared to touch their weapons. When I went overseas, we actually flew in. We flew from Fort Dix, and we flew into not Holland. Scotland. We flew into Scotland. We had a couple-hour layover in Scotland, and then we flew to Camp Bury, which is in Kuwait. So we spent. When we first got to Kuwait, we got there in the middle of the night. So the raid buses had 8 buses waiting on us, and we were, everybody been up. I don't know, at this point we'd been up 28, 29 hours, and being a first sergeant, when you go someplace, they always look for. Normally, they don't look for a commissioned officer. They look for a senior NCO. And when we first got over, there was a little compact vehicle, and 3 guys got out of it, and they came over and said, "First Sergeant, we need a designated shooter off each bus." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I need somebody with a weapon off each bus." I said, "Okay." So I took myself, and I was riding on the first bus, and just went and grabbed 7 other individuals, and they started handing out ammunition. I'm thinking, this is odd. And he said to me, they gave us a briefing, said that you guys are the designated shooters. When we convoy from here to Camp Ewing, the airport was called Ali Al Salim, and when we flew from Ali Al Salim to Camp Ewing, the individuals that were giving us the briefing said, any vehicles at all try to get between these buses while we're convoying, you shoot through the window and you kill them. And we all kind of looked around each other, and one of the young soldiers said, well, what do you mean? And this staff sergeant said, what part of shoot through the window and kill them don't you understand? Somebody tries to get in the middle of these buses, you shoot through the window and kill them. And I think that was the first realization. I thought, wow, I guess I'm really here. It was pretty enlightening, and I know every soldier was going, I hope to Christ nobody gets between these buses, because I'm not sure I can shoot through the window and kill somebody or not. So it was pretty enlightening.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.